Approval rules for solar are complicated. There was a lot of interest on this topic, and it's, solar power is the air conditioning of the 2000s. So every body corporate manager on their website has an air conditioning application form, because we got, as an industry, hundreds of thousands of air conditioning applications in the early 2000s, and now we don't get any anymore, or very few. And now we get lots of solar applications. So it's just the next emerging technology, and as the cost comes down, more and more people are taking it up. And this might sound familiar. So the government in 2010, and then they revised it in 2022 last year, made solar panels a right and not a privilege for owners. So owners in all types of property, including new housing estates and strata, can have solar power, and it prevented the body corporate and developers from blocking solar based on aesthetics, so the look of the solar panels. The body corporate, importantly, can still consider the structural integrity of the system, but we haven't ever seen that be an issue for any of our clients. I haven't seen any buildings falling over because of the solar panels. Usually it's aesthetics is the concern, which is not a valid concern according to the government. But the other issue is just knowing who's done what solar installations and making sure it's done properly, so that you don't have, or you minimize future problems with the roof. So the body corporate, it can't just say no solar, but it can make bylaws about who maintains the system, who maintains the roof under the system, what happens if you're doing roof repairs as a body corporate and you need to move someone's solar panels off the roof, fix the roof, and then put the solar panels back on. Who pays for that? What condition do the panels need to be kept in? And then other stuff that's not the panels themselves. So where does that big inverter box go? Like, you don't want that plonked on the front of your building. You'd prefer that on the side, or near the hot water system, something like that, so it's out of view. So I have very, very rarely seen a building that has a bylaw about solar panels. So every building, or nearly every building, has a pet bylaw, and they've just run with that since they were created. That's what I'm saying should be changed. So don't just continue your pet bylaw, but go and review it. In the case of solar, you probably don't have a solar panel bylaw unless you're a relatively new building. And even then, it can be patchy as to whether the developer gave you a bylaw or not. So you can always add a new bylaw dealing with solar panels, setting some clear rules, and then setting out what approval process your building will be using moving forward. If your building has not got its own specific bylaw about solar panels, this diagram will show you what the plan is. This is a very hotly contested area of body corporate law. On the right hand side in red, this is the easiest one, and we'll deal with that first. So if you're in an apartment building, either a high rise, or it might not be that high, but even like 2-3 stories, and you've got units stacked on top of each other, usually there is not enough roof space to go around. So if you're on the top floor, you would have a roof over your head, but the units below you don't have their own roof space. So in that type of building, the law says that the body corporate should ensure that each owner has enough space to do the same installation. And if you've got 100 apartments, there's definitely not enough room on the roof to put 100 different solar systems. Some really small apartment buildings, there might be enough roof if you divide it up carefully, but that sort of depends on the layout of the building and whether your roof has already got stuff on it, like hot water systems or a pool or something. So in those types of buildings, most owners can't have individual systems just from the physical restriction, but the body corporate may use the space that is available and install a shared system where the solar energy goes into the body corporate's meter and runs your lift or runs your common area lighting. So nobody's individual power bills get lower, but the body corporate's power bill gets lower, which means your levies could be lower. So that's the type of solar installation you would look at in an apartment building most of the time. On the left under our blue heading, these are the buildings where everybody usually has their own roof. So you're either in a townhouse or a duplex, might be a group of 2, group of 3 or more in a row, but everybody usually, whether you're 1 or 2 stories, usually you've got your own patch of roof above just your lot, or houses. So some strata schemes are a series of freestanding houses. They obviously have their own roof. So that's the sort of physical building we're thinking about here. It looks like a house or a duplex. Under those types, there's 2 different plans that exist. So in the green is a standard format plan, and in the yellow is a building format plan. So standard format plan first. I just had a look at our client list. Only about 10% of our clients are under a standard format plan, 90% under a building format plan. And there's nothing that special about our clients compared with the rest of Queensland. So I think that ratio would be roughly the same for all townhouses in the state. So under a standard format plan, the roof is owned by the owner. So if you buy lot 1, you own your interior space, but you also own the building and you own the roof, which means you're paying for that roof, you maintain it, it's your problem, and you have a greater ability to control what you do with it. In a standard format plan, bylaws will still generally require approval for solar. The committee can't say no solar, but they can have some input as to placement, access, disruption, parking. So you might have a general bylaw that says any changes need to be approved because, there's limited parking and you don't want to have tradies blocking the road. So that type of approval might still exist, even if it's not specifically related to solar. That standard format plan, usually because it's just the mechanics of installing solar, often that can be done by the body corporate committee, so the small group of elected representatives, and that means it can be done quite quickly. Contrasting with that, under the building format plan, which is most people in townhouses and duplexes, in those types of plans, the body corporate owns the roof. So you own the space inside your lot, inside your townhouse, whatever it is, and the body corporate owns the exterior envelope of it, and it owns the roof on top of it. So even though you might have your own roof over your part of the lot, that roof isn't yours, it's owned by the body corporate. So the body corporate owns all the roofs, and in this type of plan, if the roofs leak, the body corporate comes and fixes them for you. So it's the body corporate's roof and it just shelters your lot. So for you to put solar panels on that roof, you're actually installing it on property which is owned by all of the owners collectively, and that is why there is a much higher threshold for approval in a building format plan. And in the legislation in a building format plan, it says anything over $3,000 of value is considered a major change to the common property and needs to go to an AGM. So that rule applies if you're an owner and you wanted to build a fountain in the front of the complex. Over $3,000, you'd need to go to the AGM. And that seems intuitive because you wouldn't want people just making random improvements or changes to the property without all the other owners' agreement. So in my fountain example, everybody sort of thinks, okay, well, that makes sense. But that rule also applies to solar panels on the roof because it's still a change to the common property. So whilst it might be common sense that everybody should have the ability to do it, the law is quite strict on the type of decision required for solar panels. So that's why an AGM or an EGM, so a meeting of all owners, is usually required for solar panels because most of the time, 90% of the time, the application is in a building format plan building, and most solar panels cost more than $3,000 installed. That $3,000 is also before any rebates. So we get this question all the time. If you have a $5,000 system with a $3,000 rebate, so it only costs you $2,000 out of pocket, it's still $5,000 worth of stuff that's going on the roof. So it's still over the threshold. Even if you got it for free, it's the value of the thing, not what you personally paid for it. That's where bylaws may be changed to streamline approval process, because most bylaws, as I said, don't mention solar. You could have a bylaw change that says everybody should have the ability to put solar on their roof, on the common property roof, directly above their own lot, and for that to be, given consent by the committee, so committee can check that it's done professionally and doesn't, cause roof leaks or whatever their relevant considerations are. But take away that requirement to wait for the AGM, which means you're getting more quickly, and you don't have that issue of waiting 10 months for a decision on something. And changing bylaws is not cheap, or it's not free. It costs comfortably $1,000 to do it properly and get some advice on it. But the alternative, if you're in a complex with 50 townhouses, you'd need to have 50 AGMs or EGMs to approve everybody's solar panels, and that's not free either. And those people would rather a decision that gets made once for everybody rather than constant new decisions and new wait time. So you've got to weigh up the advantage and disadvantage of those costs.